Hi Lancers, this video is going to take you through planning for your essay. Congratulations on collecting enough research notes to be able to create a multi-paragraph essay that will then become your slideshow. So this is a STAR organizer, a STAR plan. You may or may not have seen this in your English class. But it is a great way to organize all those research notes you collected into a coherent essay. If you spend time filling this out and being very thoughtful about it, you will end up with a great product that is well organized and has everything in it that you need. So putting some time in here on the plan will actually make your writing go much faster too. Think about doing most of your thinking here, and then the essay itself requires a little less. So first we have basically for this one, we have divided our plan divided into 5 parts. So at the top, this box represents all the information that will go into your introduction paragraph. And that will be probably 3 to 4 or 5 sentences. And then you have a place to plan your body paragraphs, paragraphs 2, 3, and 4. And then the last box is a place to plan your conclusion. So on the back of this paper, there are some helpful hints and tips. So I want to start just by revisiting the prompt, because before you do your plan, you should always make sure you're familiar with what the prompt is asking you to do. So the prompt just asks you to describe the climate of northern Canada, and it explain how it affects the people living there, specifically discuss the population, transportation, and food. So it's really asking us to do 2 things: describe the climate and then explain how it affects people living there. So as you look at the STAR plan, I want you to think, you have 3 body paragraphs. What do you think those 3 body paragraphs might be about? You'll have 3 paragraphs. What would be the topic for each of them? Give that some thought. If you are confused, you can look back to your prompt. So for this, just to get an idea of where we're going with this, you will have a body paragraph for each of the 3 topics that we have to talk about. So you might be saying, well, where does climate fit? Well, we're going to be describing climate in the introduction, and then the rest of our paragraph will be, or rest of our essay will be explaining how climate affects these 3 things that the prompt asks you to do. So go ahead and pause the video and fill out the STAR, the topic for each of your 3 paragraphs. The first one should be population, second one transportation, third one food. When you're done, go ahead and resume the video. Okay, so now let's talk about the introduction. So you're going to want to start your introduction. Your introduction contains 2 parts. It contains a lead and it contains a thesis statement. If you're not familiar with what a thesis statement is a topic sentence for the entire essay. And then each of your paragraphs will have a topic sentence that tells what's just in that paragraph. But a thesis statement is what describes what an essay is about. In addition to that, you're going to have a lead. In this case, your lead will come first, and then you'll end with your thesis statement. So on the back, it talks a little bit about what a lead is. A lead is what fills out the rest of your introduction. A lead usually gives background information and sets the scene. Sometimes it also, the setting the scene can involve like a hook to hook the reader into what you're writing. For this project, I think it makes sense to use the lead to describe the climate. And so we're going to go back to our plan. And for the lead, you're going to want to describe the climate in 2 to 3 sentences. Now, fortunately, you took great organized research notes, and so everything you need for that lead should be here on your climate page. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to look over all the notes you took for climate, not my notes, but your notes. And I want you to pick out the bullet points that you think would best explain to the reader what the climate of northern Canada is like. Maybe you highlight the notes you're going to use. You don't have to use everything, especially if you get some repeats in there. But go ahead, look at your notes, identify what you think will be the best ones to describe the climate to your reader. And then when you're done with that, resume the video. So now that you've identified your notes that you're going to use, you're going to fill them in here. You don't have to write incomplete sentences. You can always refer back to your notes while you're writing, but go ahead and put some of those notes that you took into your plan. So for example, mine might look like this. These I took directly from my notes. I wrote that I wanted to start by explaining that the land is tundra, which is a cold and dry with long winters and short summers. I know tundra is a word that I have to use in my writing. And then I went on to give a little more specific information about how in some parts it may be freezing for all but a few weeks of the year. Maybe you have even more specific information about how cold it can get. But go ahead again, pause the video and record the information about climate that you plan to use for your lead. And when you're done, resume the video. Now let's talk about your thesis statement. I don't want to give too much away, so I'm not going to write one for you, but on the back there are some helpful hints for writing a thesis statement. So a thesis statement tells the reader what you are writing about in your whole essay. You can do this by restating the prompt in the form of a statement or answer. So a great place to go for a thesis statement is to look directly at what's written here. Keep in mind that there are some words that really must and probably should be used in your introduction, in either your thesis or your lead. So somewhere in your introduction, you must use the words Northern Canada and climate, because this is about Northern Canada and about how climate affects the people living there. Okay, bonus words to include, maybe in your thesis statement, would be to be a little more specific and use the words population, transportation, and food. So looking at your thesis statement, you're going to write one sentence that tells the reader what you are going to be writing about. And for help, look back here and you can take these words and phrases and use them in your thesis statement. So pause the video and give it a try. And then if you really get stumped after trying, you can let me know. Okay, so now that you're done planning your introduction, let's talk about how you plan each of your 3 body paragraphs. So let's start with population. To plan this paragraph, you're going to want to flip to the population notes you collected in your notebook. So similar to what you do in the introduction, you're going to want to look over those notes and you're going to want to think about which of my notes best helps me explain to the reader how climate affects population. I put room for 2 notes. You can do more than that. I probably would. I have room to do more than just 2 pieces of evidence. So I might add little dashes below or in between. So go ahead, pause the video and look over all of your population notes and think about which ones make most sense to use in your paragraph about population. Again, you don't have to use everything, especially if you have 2 details that kind of tell the same thing. And this doesn't have to be in complete sentences. You can be as detailed as you want in your plan, or if it works for you to be a little less detailed and to have your notes next to you when you write, that is fine as well. So pause the video and identify which notes you're going to use. When you're done, you can resume. So once you've picked out your notes that you want to use, you're going to put them in these bullet points. So here would be an example. I might include these 2 details. It's too cold for most people. So that gets to how the climate affects the population. And then I also want to include something about population density because I know that's a phrase I'm supposed to use in my writing. So I wrote that the population density is very low. Now, I might then have some more specific information about population density, about exactly how low it is. That specific evidence is always good to make your point. So take the notes that you selected from your notes and you're going to copy them down into the plan for population, paragraph 2, and then resume the video. Okay, next step, and we're almost done after this step, is to do the same process for transportation and food. So again, you're going to go back to your notes in your notebook that you took about transportation. Sorry, I'm having a hard time getting this focused. And you're going to select which details you're going to use to make your point here and do the same thing for food. Go ahead and do that. And when you're done, resume the video and we'll talk about the conclusion. Okay, so for the conclusion, for me, this is the hardest part about writing. The conclusion contains kind of 2 parts. One, you're going to want to restate your thesis statement, but in different words, and then include some final thoughts. You want to have more than 1 sentence in your conclusion. Your conclusion might only be 2 sentences. It might be more, but it should be at least 2 sentences. So one thing you should know about the conclusion is you are not required to plan your conclusion. You can if you want. Maybe you already have some ideas about what you want to put in your conclusion. Jot them down. You can always change it later if you want, but get them down so you don't forget. Or what I usually do is I like to wait till I've written everything and then I read it all the way through and I think about what makes sense for my conclusion. It's just easier for me that way. So you are welcome to plan it or not plan it, your choice. But I want to give you a couple of tips in case you do want to plan it now. So on the back, I give you some ideas for the final thoughts part. So here, restating your thesis in different words, you're going to go back to that thesis statement at the top, and you're going to want to tell the thesis statement tells what you're going to write about. The thesis and in the conclusion, you tell them what you did write about. Okay, you kind of you summarize what you wrote about in your writing. Now, for the final thoughts, that always gets tricky for people. Like, what else goes in my conclusion? Here are some options. So one, you can give your opinion or thoughts related to the topic, your impressions, your opinions. You can ask an interesting question to make your reader think more deeply about the topic. Questions tend to draw readers in and make them think. You can also connect back to your lead, and your lead was about climate. So you can look at what you had in your lead and kind of come full circle and make a connection to that lead. All right, so go ahead and plan your conclusion if you would like. Once you're done with that, you are ready to move on to the actual writing, and you can go ahead and watch the next video for that. Good luck, and let me know if you have any questions.